Former Toronto MP Marco Mendicino is going to leave his job as Prime Minister Mark Carney's chief of staff.
Carney says Mendicino agreed to serve as his initial chief of staff after the Liberal leadership race during the election and the subsequent transition. In a statement, the Prime Minister says Mendicino will be staying into the summer to support the launch of the government's mandate in Parliament and to lead the transition of the PMO. Mendicino announced in January he would not be seeking re-election in the riding of Eglinton Lawrence, which he's represented since 2015.
Okay, so right now let's bring in Scott Reid, principal at Scott Reid and CTV News' political commentator to talk about this. Scott, good to see you. Happy Friday. So let's begin with the news about Mark Mendicino not continuing as Prime Minister Carney's chief of staff.
Yeah, it's a really interesting announcement. In some ways, it's actually an announcement that he is continuing longer than expected, because people sort of thought that he was probably leaving immediately following the election. Looks like the Prime Minister's asked him to stick around, help manage the transition, get staffing done. For people that are living in and around Ottawa, this question of staffing is a big one. So he's staying on for a couple more months, and then looks like he'll be back in Toronto. And look, he's earned a lot of praise. We are reminded that he was at the center of an operation that started just a few months ago, 26 points behind in the polls, somehow managed to come back and fall with just one hair of a majority government. So he's earned a lot of doffs to the hat.
It's interesting, too. And Scott, I know you and Marco are friends, so I realize this sort of, I think we should sort of put that out there here. But it sounds like Marco has more municipal political ambitions. I don't know how much you can talk about that and what you've spoken about with Marco about this, but it seems like he's looking at challenging Mayor Chow next year.
Well, I will step carefully because I have had a couple conversations with him about it. I think what I would say, to be very blunt, really transparent, is that he's been urged to run for mayor. It's something he's considering. I think he's excited by the possibility, but I don't think and his wife may be watching this morning. So if I say that he needs to run for mayor, she may reach through the internet and strangle me. But I think it's on his mind. It's a strong possibility. And it just shows you that, there's a guy with some options. But look, the Squid Game wars of who's going to become, a top contender to Mayor Chow for the next election. There's a lot of scrap to go yet in that fight. So we'll see.
And let's just remind people of Mendicino's ministerial roles. I mean, he was once the public safety minister from 2021 to 2023. He's got, law as his background. So maybe kind of talk about his roles and kind of the expertise he could bring to the city as a politician.
So he first came onto the scene as a prosecutor, as a Crown prosecutor in the terrorist trial a few years back. People may remember that's where he sort of first burst onto the public consciousness. From there, he ran for the nomination for the Liberals in 2015 in Eglinton Lawrence, got elected, backbench member of Parliament, gets promoted to cabinet, holds a couple of cabinet roles, runs into some hot water, to be blunt. So, finds himself out of cabinet, and then is picked by Carney, as we were just talking about, to help sort of, stabilize his team, lead that transition. So something of a bit of a rebirth. So he brings a background in crime and justice issues. He worked on immigration as the immigration minister, public safety issues. So it's an interesting resume, to be sure.
And let's move from Marco, Scott, to potentially who could be next in terms of Prime Minister Carney's chief of staff. It's a key role. I know you know that well from your time in Prime Minister Martin's office here. Are there any leading contenders at this point? Because I understand the Prime Minister's spoken to some people, but he's not necessarily perhaps getting a lot of interest in this?
Well, I think that's an unfair characterization. I think there's a lot of interest in chief of staff to the Prime Minister. It effectively makes you one of the 2 or 3 most powerful people in Ottawa, which means that you have a lot of influence. And, when it comes to Mark Carney, he is going to be a demanding boss. There's no question about that. So, if you're the kind of person who has 7 children and a crowded schedule, this is not the job for you.
Right.
I think they're looking for somebody that the Prime Minister trusts, somebody that the Prime Minister can respect, and someone that's going to be able to do the job for 2-3 years. I don't think they're looking for a short-term candidate. So, there have been lots of names that have been kicked around. There have been people that have declined the job. There have been people that he has turned thumbs down on. So I think they're going to take the summer, find somebody that fits the bill, and then be off to the races. But I can tell you from personal experience, you don't want to rush that decision. The chief of staff, the buffer between the Prime Minister, cabinet, the public, the media. You want someone that you trust completely and someone whose judgment you absolutely can rely upon. So it's the kind of job you want to take your time to select.
Yeah, for sure. Very quickly, Scott, was this a surprise, the news of him not being chief of staff anymore? And did he cite a reason for why?
Well, it had always been a temporary job. So as I said, I think the surprise actually is that he's sticking around through the summer. Certainly my expectation personally, as someone that's known Marco for a long time, is that, pretty much as soon as the campaign was over, he'd be packing it back to Toronto. I think because the Prime Minister hasn't settled on a new candidate for the job, and because there is this need to staff up the government. And, that sounds boring and administrative, but it's of critical importance. So I think he sort of managed to tempt him to stick around. And why? I think why? Because he genuinely wants to be back in Toronto with his family. And I do think, there's a possibility of next horizons, whether that's working in the private sector or taking the tumble at municipal politics.
All right, that is our political analyst, Scott Reid, who will join us next Tuesday, of course, as he always does. Appreciate this Friday hit from you this morning. Scott, have a great weekend.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, and thanks. Can you guys tell Bill thanks for blessing us with a little more rain here on?
Yeah, no kidding, right? We've been thanking him all week long.
Yeah, we will.
For sure. Oh, he's got more.
He's got more for you, he says, Scott.
Hey,
Enjoy the rain. Okay.
See you, Scott.
Take care.